What's poppin', y'all? It's Finesse Choir, and this week I'm talking about critical race theory in schools.
What does it mean?
So the new hot tea of 2022 in the suburban world is whether critical race theory should be taught in schools. And I know millennials are probably watching this right now like, what? But I swear, this is actually a discussion. The question is whether critical race theory is the best way of understanding how racism has shaped public policy and other areas of the law, or is it just a way of new society of 2022 or 2021 just guilting the whites? So, in other words, is this the best way of understanding how racism has systematically impacted other races, or is it a way to kind of just make white people feel bad for being white? And I swear this is a conversation and liberals and conservatives are in disarray. Let me put it in sports terms because that always helps me. Boom. Conservatives are on the right and they're Deontay Wilder. Liberals on the left and we're Tyson Fury. Boom, boom, boom. We've been going back and forth. There's been a few knockouts. Whop, one on this side. Whop, one on this side. But the liberals are technically in the lead and the liberals have edged out just as much as the Dems and Tyson Fury have slightly edged out Deontay Wilder. We don't have to talk about that fight, but yeah, he did knock him out twice. That's crazy. But anyways, the liberals are in the lead a little bit because critical race theory is now being taught in schools. I wrote a blog about this, so I'm going to read it directly from my blog to help you guys understand a little bit. A slew of conservative backlash popped up when the New York Times published the 1619 Project by Nicole Hannah-Jones, who is currently in the process of starting a Center for Democracy and Journalism at Howard University. The discussion has gotten even bigger now that kids are back in school. Now, numerous state legislatures are debating bills seeking to ban critical race theory in classrooms. As of late August, 27 states have introduced bills or taken other steps that would restrict teaching critical race theory or limit how teachers can discuss racism and sexism, according to an Education Week analysis. So, what exactly is critical race theory?
What is this, honey?
I'm gonna again read from my blog so that you hopefully go read my blog as well. Critical race theory is an academic concept that is about 40 years old. The basic framework for critical race theory, also known as CRT, derives from legal analysis in the late 1970s and early 1980s by legal scholars like Derek Bell, Kimberly Crenshaw, and Richard Delgado. The core idea is that race is a social construct and that racism is not merely the product of individuals' bias or prejudice, but something embedded in legal systems and policy. Y'all know I love examples, so here's a good one. Gerrymandering. Basically, in the early 1930s, white people went full-blown Picasso and just started drawing lines everywhere to separate areas that are wealthy and areas that are not wealthy. Seems like something that's not that big of a deal, but banks subsequently used those lines to determine if they lended into communities that were poor or lended into communities that were richer. So basically, banks were saying we're not going to lend in poor communities and we're using those lines to determine which things are poor. So black people are not financially as established, or minority communities are not as financially established because we're not getting the same loans as other people because of these lines. Hence, systematic. Another example is raising the base rent in certain neighborhoods. We see it a lot even in DC right now in Navy Yard. Southeast, predominantly minority neighborhood. Now they're raising the rent in these areas or rebuilding the apartment buildings so that minority communities and people that previously lived in them can't afford them. So you're not technically saying black people cannot live here or minorities can't live here, but you're putting the price at a rate that black people cannot afford. And minority communities are shoveled out of these areas. And then they build a Chick-fil-A and Whole Foods. But this is the systematic aspect in that racism is not something that's just, oh, I don't like this person. Oh, I have this bias. Oh, I have this prejudice. It's actually something that prohibits minorities from advancing in society. And so these are the things that should be taught in schools because we're often taught this, and this happened, this, and this community was enslaved. We don't talk about new policies that affect these communities. And so that's what people are largely arguing should be taught in schools. I don't know if you guys read that news article, but there was a white mom that basically was mad because her daughter came home asking if she was born evil. So the white mom was like, this is crazy. My daughter came home saying this can't be taught, da 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 da. And I'm not saying that it's okay for anyone to think that or should be taught that people are born evil. However, I wish I could literally record the things I used to come home saying to my parents. Because when you're a kid, you don't know why these things were done. You're just going to school and you're the only black person in the classroom and they're like, oh, you used to be a slave. How do you feel about that?
You think Harriet Tubman was walking around with a fucking nice shiny fucking dress on with a fucking crown on her head when she was taking slaves to freedom?
And you're just in the classroom like, what? Why am I 3/5? Why is this a thing? So it'd be nice to see how that affects you now, because a lot of people think it might not apply to them. Oh, that was in the past. It was in the past, but no, a lot of these things have continually continued. Like, I can't even find the vocabulary for it. Anyways, in all honesty, the past year has been absolutely insane and has increased a lot of people's awareness of what other communities are going through. And I think that's one of the beautiful things that came out of this terrible pandemic, is just a little bit of understanding for what other people are going through. And so for me, I don't think there's the right answer. Do I think that critical race theory should be taught in school? I have no idea. I just remember being a kid and knowing how learning those things affected me. And so I think that it should be taught if you're going to teach people that Black people used to be slaves, or that Latino communities aren't allowed to migrate into this country and there are several laws prohibiting them from doing it. Things like that. So if you're going to teach people, yeah, you were enslaved, teach people about why they were enslaved or who was their enslavers. I think the two go hand in hand. You guys come here for answers and I don't give those. I just want to spew thought and have everyone thinking about those things. I also wore this sweatsuit because this is what people wore in school when I was in school. It's a Juicy Couture sweatsuit. I don't know if people still wear Juicy. Maybe it's like making a comeback. Actually, no, like they definitely don't wear Juicy. Like, we used to wear Rocawear and FUBU. Actually, I saw some vintage Rocawear being sold on StockX for like $150 and I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. But anyways, once again, your favorite informational socialist has given you this information for free, so take it and run with it. And if you are a reader or even into audiobooks, I highly recommend you reading Nicole Hannah-Jones' 1619 Project. It's highly discussed and highly talked about. And also just read up on critical race theory, see what you believe, and leave comments about what you think. I would love to know your opinions. I love opinions. Anyways, don't forget about the art of finesse. See you next week.